My son is not stupid. The words came out harder than Matthew intended, but he was past caring. He stood in the cramped office of the Riverside Community Learning Center, fists clenched, watching the young woman behind the desk, Grace Miller, meet his glare without flinching. Grace kept her voice level, though her heart hammered. I never said he was. In fact, Mr. Hale, I said the exact opposite. Your son is bright, creative, and... Then why can't he read? Matthew's voice cracked on the last word. She saw it then, beneath the anger, the fear. Because he sees letters differently than most kids do. I think Liam has dyslexia. Matthew felt the floor tilt. Dyslexia. The word he'd spent 38 years running from. The diagnosis he'd never gotten because his father thought learning disabilities were excuses for lazy, stupid boys. He'd built an empire, Hale Media Group, a tech conglomerate worth billions, to prove he wasn't that kid anymore. And now his son. You're wrong. His voice came out flat, defensive. Grace pulled out a folder. I've been working with Liam for 3 weeks. Look at this. She slid a paper across the desk. Liam's handwriting sprawled across the page, letters reversed, words running together. He reverses his B's and D's consistently. He can tell you complex stories verbally, but when he tries to read them back, he loses his place, gets frustrated. Matthew stared at his son's handwriting and saw his own second-grade papers, the red marks, the teacher's notes, not applying himself. The shame burned in his throat. I can help him, Grace continued, steel underneath her kindness. I specialize in learning differences. But I need you to trust me. And I need you to stop fighting me every time I suggest something new. Matthew had earned his reputation at this center over 3 weeks. Difficult, argumentative. He'd shown up in worn jeans and a baseball cap, driving a 10-year-old truck, because he didn't want anyone treating Liam differently once they knew his father could buy the whole building. What do you need from me? The question came out quieter than he intended. Grace felt something shift. Come to the sessions. Not just drop off and pick up. Actually sit in. Watch what I do. Learn the techniques so you can reinforce them at home. And Mr. Hale, stop looking at him like he's broken. He's not. He just learns differently. The words hit Matthew like a fist. Was that what he'd been doing? I'll stay. I'll watch. I'll learn. Good. We start tomorrow at 4. And Mr. Hale, you might learn something about yourself too. The next afternoon, Matthew sat outside the tutoring room, watching through the window as Grace worked with Liam. She'd transformed the space into something that looked more like a game room than a classroom. Colorful mats, letter tiles in every shade, a whiteboard covered in drawings. Okay, Liam, Grace said, settling beside him on the floor. We're going to play word rescue. See, all these letters are trapped in the wrong order, and they need a hero to come save them. Think you can be that hero? Matthew watched his son's head lift. Like a video game? Exactly like a video game. Grace saw the smallest smile, and her heart squeezed. This was why she stayed in this underfunded center instead of taking the corporate training position, triple the salary, benefits, normal hours. But she'd never met a kid she didn't believe in. She pulled out letter tiles in bright colors. Red letters are the tricky ones, the ones that like to flip around. Blue letters are the helpers, and green letters are the vowels, the magic ones that make words sing. Matthew leaned forward. He'd never thought about letters having colors, personalities. When he was a kid, they were just black marks his brain scrambled into nonsense. For 45 minutes, he watched Grace work magic. She never raised her voice, never showed frustration. She turned every mistake into a game, every struggle into a puzzle they could solve together. She used toy cars to help Liam track lines of text. She made up silly songs for phonics rules. She celebrated every tiny victory. And slowly, impossibly, Liam began to relax. When he successfully sounded out a word, his whole face lit up, and he turned toward the window where Matthew sat, seeking approval. Matthew gave him a thumbs up, and the smile his son returned was worth more than every dollar in his bank account. When the session ended, Grace stepped into the hallway where Matthew still sat. "He did great today," she said. Matthew stood. "You're really good at this, at making him feel like he's not broken?" Grace supplied gently. "Yeah." She studied him. "Were you a kid who couldn't read?" Matthew's entire body went rigid. No one knew this about him. He'd buried that part of his life so deep that even his closest associates had no idea the CEO of Hale Media Group had barely graduated high school. "It doesn't matter," he said, but his voice betrayed him. "It matters to Liam. If you've been where he is, you can help him in ways I can't." Matthew met her eyes. "I was the stupid kid. My dad. He didn't believe in learning disabilities. I taught myself to read when I was 22 because I was tired of people thinking I was an idiot. I built a company where no one could ever call me stupid again." Grace's throat tightened. "You're not stupid. You never were. I know that now. But that kid in second grade, he didn't. And when I see Liam struggle, I see myself, and His voice broke. "I can't let him go through what I did." She did something that surprised both of them. She touched his arm briefly. "He won't. Because he has you and he has me. And we're going to teach him that different doesn't mean less." Matthew looked at where her hand had been. When was the last time someone had touched him with simple kindness, no agenda? "Thank you. Come tomorrow. Same time. And Mr. Hale? Maybe think about reading with him, tonight, out loud. Let him hear that it's okay to stumble." That night, Matthew sat with Liam in a picture book, and he read it out loud. He stumbled over words, had to sound some out, and his voice shook. But Liam curled against his side and listened, and when Matthew fumbled a word, his son patted his hand and said, "It's okay, Dad. You can try again." Matthew held his boy a little tighter and kept reading. Over the next 3 weeks, a routine developed. Matthew came to every session, watched, and slowly began to participate. Grace taught him about multisensory learning, showed him apps and techniques. And somewhere in those weeks, something shifted between them. It started small, a shared smile when Liam succeeded. Matthew began arriving early, and Grace looked forward to those few minutes of conversation. She learned he was handy, that he'd fixed the center's broken door without being asked. He learned she stayed late most nights, working with other kids whose parents couldn't afford private tutoring. Neither of them named what was growing between them. It came to a head on a Thursday evening, 6 weeks in. Liam had just read an entire book by himself. Stumbling, slow, but he'd done it. And his whoop of joy brought tears to Grace's eyes. After he ran off to pick a prize, Matthew stood in the doorway, watching Grace with an expression that made her breath catch. "You did that," he said. "You gave him that." "We both did," Grace said softly. Matthew took a step closer. The space suddenly felt smaller, warmer. "Grace, can I take you to dinner? To say thank you properly?" Grace knew she should say no. She had a policy about boundaries with parents. But what she felt when she looked at Matthew had nothing to do with professional courtesy. "Yes," she said. They went to a diner 3 blocks away. Matthew had suggested somewhere nicer, but Grace laughed and said she lived in sneakers and cardigans. He didn't tell her he owned a penthouse downtown, that his usual haunts had month-long reservation lists. Over burgers and fries, they talked. Grace told him about growing up as the youngest of 5, about the teacher who'd encouraged her. Matthew told her about building his first app in a library computer lab, about betting everything on an idea most people thought would fail. "What kind of apps?" Grace asked. Matthew hesitated. This was always the moment of truth, but something about Grace made him want to stretch this moment longer. Media streaming, mostly. Technology that helps people access content in different formats. Audiobooks, text-to-speech. Grace's eyes lit up. "That's incredible. I use audiobooks with so many students. That's why I built them. For kids like Liam. For who I used to be." Grace reached across the table and took his hand. The touch sent electricity up Matthew's arm. "You're a good father. I hope you know that." Matthew looked at their joined hands. "I'm better when you're around. Both of us are." They sat like that, hands linked across the scarred tabletop. Grace felt something unfurling in her chest, warm and terrifying and wonderful. Matthew paid the check and drove her back to the center. They stood in the pool of light from a street lamp, neither ready to say goodnight. "Grace," Matthew said, "I'd like to see you again. Not just at the center, just us." She knew she should be responsible, but she was tired of being careful. "I'd like that too." Matthew smiled, really smiled. He stepped closer. "Can I kiss you?" "Yes," she whispered. He cupped her face in his hands, palms rough with calluses. He lowered his head slowly, and when his lips met hers, it was soft and sweet and achingly tender. Grace's hands came up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heart hammering. The kiss deepened, and she felt Matthew's control start to slip. Heat pooled in her stomach, and she pressed closer. Matthew made a low sound and pulled her flush against him. Grace fit perfectly. He kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. And then Liam's voice echoed in his head, and reality crashed back. He had a son, responsibilities, and he was lying to this woman, letting her think he was just another working single father when he was one of the wealthiest men in the country. Matthew pulled back, breathing hard, his forehead pressed to Grace's. "We should stop." Grace nodded, dazed. "Okay, yeah, take this slow." Slow is good. Matthew wanted to tell her everything. "But how did you tell someone you'd been lying?" "Grace, what? Nothing, just, I'm glad I met you." She smiled. "I'm glad you met me too, even if you were kind of an angry jerk at first." Matthew laughed. "I wasn't I? You were protecting your son, I get it." He kissed her forehead, more intimate than what came before. "Good night, Grace." "Good night, Matthew." He waited until she drove away before getting in his truck. Then he sat in the dark parking lot and put his head in his hands, because he was falling for this woman, and he was going to have to tell her the truth. And he was terrified it would ruin everything. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Matthew and Grace saw each other 3 times a week officially, Liam's sessions plus Friday dinners. But they found excuses for more. Coffee on Sundays, spontaneous lunches, phone calls that stretched into early morning. Liam thrived. His reading improved week by week. His confidence grew. He started volunteering to read aloud in class, checking out library books without prompting. And he adored Grace, drew her pictures she hung in her office. Matthew watched his son bloom and felt something heal in his chest. Grace had done this, but the lie sat between them, invisible but growing heavier. It came to a head on a Tuesday afternoon. Matthew was working from home, the penthouse he'd never mentioned, when his assistant called. "Mr. Hale, Forbes is running the annual Billionaire list tomorrow. They're leading with you and the Hale Media Group acquisition." Matthew felt his stomach drop. "Can we delay it?" "It's already gone to print. Digital goes live at 6 a.m. He had maybe 12 hours before Grace would see his face splashed across business news. He should have told her weeks ago. He'd tell her tonight, after Liam's session. He'd explain everything and pray she'd understand. The session felt surreal. Matthew watched Grace work with Liam, memorizing the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her face lit up when Liam succeeded. She glanced over and smiled, and his heart cracked. When Liam's mother picked him up, Grace found Matthew still sitting in the hallway, his expression grim. "Hey," she said, "what's wrong? Can we talk? Somewhere private?" Grace's stomach flipped. Those words never preceded good news. "My office?" They walked back and Matthew shut the door. The room felt too small suddenly, airless. "Matthew, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "I haven't been completely honest with you." Grace felt something cold settle in her chest. "About what?" "About who I am." He pulled out his phone, pulled up a news article, and handed it to her. "This is running tomorrow." Grace looked down. Forbes billionaire list. Matthew Hale tops tech rankings after multi-billion-dollar acquisition. There was a professional photo of Matthew in an expensive suit, looking nothing like the man in worn jeans. The article detailed his net worth, his company, his reputation as ruthless, but brilliant. She read it twice. "This is you?" "Yes." "You're a billionaire?" "Yes." Grace set the phone down carefully. "You've been lying to me for 2 months." "I didn't lie. I just didn't correct your assumptions." "That's the same thing." Her voice rose. "You let me think. I told you about my student loans, about barely affording my apartment, and the whole time you're—" She gestured at the phone, unable to find words. Matthew stepped toward her. "I didn't tell you because I wanted you to see me. Not Matthew Hale, the CEO, just Matthew. Just a dad trying to help his son." "But that's not who you are." Grace felt tears burning. Or is it? I don't even know anymore. Was any of it real? The diner, the conversations, She stopped, thinking of their kisses. "Were you laughing at me the whole time?" "No." The word came out anguished. "Grace, everything between us has been real. The most real thing in my life. I was going to tell you, I just what? Just wanted to see how long you could keep the charade going. This is my job, Matthew. These are families I work with who are struggling, and you've been pretending to be one of them while you're—" She grabbed the phone. "Worth $3 billion? I didn't think it mattered. Didn't think it mattered. Everything about you is different. The way you let me pay for coffee that one time because I insisted on splitting things. You must have thought I was ridiculous." "I thought you were incredible," Matthew said desperately. "I thought you were the first person in years who saw me as something other than a bank account. Grace, please, I need you to leave." Her voice was quiet, deadly calm. "Grace, leave. Now. And don't come back." "What about Liam?" "He needs you. I'll work with Liam. I would never punish a child for his father's lies. But you and I?" She met his eyes, and hers were hard as stone. "We're done. I don't even know who you are." The words hit like a physical blow. "I'm sorry. Grace, I'm so sorry." She turned away, and he left, closing the door softly. Grace waited until his footsteps faded before she let herself cry. She sank into her chair and sobbed, because she'd been falling in love with him. She'd been imagining a future, and it had all been based on a lie. She pulled up the article, forced herself to read it properly. Matthew Hale, self-made billionaire. Started with nothing, built an empire. Intensely private, notoriously difficult. This was the man she'd been kissing? This stranger in a $1,000 suit? And the worst part was that she could understand why he'd hidden it. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. The next few weeks were torture. Grace kept her word and continued working with Liam. But she scheduled sessions for times when Matthew would be in meetings, and she communicated only through brief, professional emails. Matthew tried to respect her boundaries, but it was killing him. Liam knew something was wrong. "Why don't you stay for my sessions anymore, Dad?" Matthew ruffled his son's hair, throat tight. "I've got a lot of work right now, buddy." She seemed sad. "Did you guys have a fight?" "Something like that." "You should apologize. That's what you always tell me to do when I mess up." If only it were that simple. Matthew threw himself into work, but even that couldn't distract him. He was in a board meeting when his CFO mentioned the Riverside Community Learning Center. "It's on the list of properties being sold for the new development downtown. The building's owner is cashing out." Matthew's head snapped up. "What development?" "The Metro Heights project. They're buying up that whole block." "The learning center?" "Gone by the end of the year unless someone buys the building. But the owner wants market value, and no nonprofit can afford that." Matthew thought of Grace's cramped office, the outdated equipment, the kids who came because it was the only place their families could afford. Grace's whole life was wrapped up in that center. An idea formed, audacious and probably stupid. "Buy the building," he said. His CFO blinked. "Sir?" "Hale Media Group will buy the building. Today, offer 20% over asking. Through a subsidiary, no one can know it's us. Keep it a tutoring center, permanently. Put it in the LLC charter. The building can only be used for educational purposes. Set up an endowment to fund operations. Make sure the current staff keeps their jobs and gets a raise." That's not exactly our usual investment strategy. "Do it anyway." 3 days later, Grace got a call from the center's director, Maria, who sounded like she was crying. "Grace, can you come to my office? Now?" Grace walked there with a heavy heart, already composing her resignation letter. Maria was indeed crying, but smiling too. "Sit down. You're not going to believe this. An investment company just bought our building, paid cash way over asking, but they're not developing it. They're keeping it as a learning center. Forever. It's in the charter. And they've set up an endowment. We'll never have to worry about funding again. We can hire more staff, update equipment, offer scholarships. We can help so many more kids." Grace felt her jaw drop. "What? Who would do that?" "I don't know. Some subsidiary. They want to remain anonymous. Grace, this is a miracle." Grace should have felt elated. But another part of her was putting pieces together. A tech billionaire, an anonymous purchase. Perfect timing. She pulled out her phone and typed, "Did you buy the center?" Matthew's response came 30 seconds later. "Can we talk, please?" Grace stared at the message. She was still angry, still hurt. But he'd saved the center, saved her job, saved the futures of dozens of kids. "One conversation," she typed back. "My office, 7 tonight." Matthew showed up at 6:45, wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than her rent. "Hi," he said. "Hi." She gestured to the chair. "Sit." He sat, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "You bought the building," Grace said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you love this place. Because the kids need it. Because I—" He stopped, then pushed forward. "Because I needed you to know that I see what you do. That I understand how important it is." Grace felt her anger cracking. "You can't buy your way back into my life, Matthew." "I'm not trying to. I bought the building before I texted you. I bought it because it was the right thing to do, whether you forgive me or not. That's very convenient. It's the truth." He leaned forward. "Grace, I know I hurt you. I know I should have told you from the beginning. But I was so tired of people seeing the money instead of me. My ex-wife married me for the lifestyle. Business partners plot behind my back. Women I date are more interested in the penthouse than the person. And then I met you, and you looked at me like I was just Matthew, a father who loved his son. And I wanted to keep being that person for as long as I could. Grace's throat felt tight. I understand that. But you didn't give me the choice to see both sides of you. You decided what I could know, and that's not trust. You're right. Matthew's voice was raw. I don't know how to fix it except to say that everything I felt, everything we shared, that was real. I wasn't pretending about that. The man I was falling for doesn't exist, Matthew. He was part truth, part omission. Matthew felt those words. Falling. For. Land like a punch and a gift. He exists. He's sitting right here. I'm not that different, Grace. I still fix things with my hands because it's one of the few good memories I have of my father. I still struggle to read sometimes when I'm tired. I still love my son more than anything. The money doesn't change those things. But it changes everything else. I'm not pretending it doesn't matter. I'm saying it's not all I am. He reached across the desk, stopped just short of touching her hand. Grace, I fell in love with you. The real me fell in love with the real you. And I don't know how to prove that except to be here, to be honest, and to hope that's enough. Grace's heart stuttered. You love me? Yes. I love how you see the best in people. I love how you fight for your students. I love how you made my son believe in himself. I love how you made me believe that maybe I could be more than just the empire I built. I love you, Grace Miller, all of you. And I am so sorry I didn't trust you with all of me. Tears were streaming down Grace's face now. You hurt me. I know. And I will spend as long as it takes making it up to you, if you'll let me. Grace looked at this complicated, brilliant, damaged, loving man, and felt her anger break. He'd made a mistake, a big one. But he'd also shown her who he was in 100 small ways. He'd been patient with his son. He'd been humble about his struggles. He'd looked at her like she hung the moon. And he'd saved her center. Not to win her back. He'd done it before asking to see her. I don't know if I can trust you again, she said honestly. I'll earn it back, however long it takes. And I'm not interested in your money. I don't want a penthouse or fancy cars. I know. That's one of the 1,000 reasons I love you. Grace laughed, watery and broken. This is insane. We've known each other for 2 months. Best 2 months of my life, Matthew said simply. She looked at him for a long moment, and she made a choice. Okay, she said. Matthew's head jerked up. Okay? Okay, we can try. Slowly. Honestly, no more secrets. No more secrets, he promised. She stood, came around the desk. Can I hug you? Please? Matthew's arms came around her, and she let herself lean in. He held her like she was everything he'd been missing. I'm still mad at you, she mumbled into his chest. I know. I'll grovel as long as you need. Good. She pulled back to look up at him. And Matthew, if you ever lie to me again, even by omission, we're done. Permanently. Never again, I swear. He kissed her then, soft and reverent. A kiss that tasted like apology and promise. Grace kissed him back and let herself hope that maybe they could build something real this time. Over the next 3 months, Matthew kept his promise. He opened his life to Grace completely. He took her to his penthouse, and she'd walked through the gleaming space with wide eyes. He introduced her to his work, brought her to the Hale Media group offices. She saw how his employees respected him, how he knew their names, how he listened. You're good at this, she'd said. I had to be. It was succeed or prove my father right. She met his ex-wife, a tense lunch where the other woman said, "He's different with you. Lighter. I hope you can keep that going." And Matthew met Grace's family, her parents, her 4 siblings, the chaos of Sunday dinners where everyone talked over each other. He'd fit in better than expected, helping her brothers fix a fence, listening to her father's stories, playing with her nieces and nephews. "They liked you," Grace said on the drive home. "They're good people. I can see where you get it from." They were building something, learning each other. Grace saw how hard Matthew worked, how the pressure weighed on him. She saw the nights he couldn't sleep, when the boy who'd been called stupid still haunted him. She saw his fierce loyalty, his dry humor, the way he loved Liam with his whole heart. And Matthew saw Grace's strength, her endless patience, her ability to find joy in small things. He saw how she worried about her students, how she spent her own money on supplies. He saw the woman who'd changed his and Liam's lives. Liam flourished. His reading was now at grade level, and he'd started writing his own stories, fantastical tales about dragons and heroes. The 3 of them had fallen into their own rhythm, tutoring sessions twice a week, plus dinners and weekend outings. Liam had started calling Grace his bonus mom, and neither adult had corrected him. It was Liam who pushed things forward. They were at the aquarium on a Saturday, watching sharks glide through a massive tank, when Liam tugged on Matthew's hand. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always, buddy." "Are you going to marry Grace?" Matthew nearly choked. Grace went bright red. "Liam, I'm just asking, because you guys love each other, right? And you're always together. And I heard Grandma say that Dad better not screw this up." Matthew shot Grace a helpless look. She bit her lip, trying not to laugh. We... That's a big question, Liam. But you do want to, right? Because I want Grace to be part of our family for real. She makes us better. Matthew looked at Grace, and she looked back. Something passed between them. A question. An answer. "Yeah, buddy," Matthew said softly, his eyes still on Grace. "I want that too." Liam whooped and threw his arms around them both. "This is the best day ever." Grace met Matthew's gaze over Liam's head, and she was crying, but happy tears. Matthew mouthed, "I love you," and she mouthed it back. That night, after they dropped Liam off with his mother, Matthew drove Grace back to her apartment. But instead of saying goodnight at her door, he followed her inside. "Grace," he said, his voice serious. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything is so right, it terrifies me." He took her hands. Liam was right today. "I do want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to watch you change more kids' lives. I want to give you the world. Not because I can buy it, but because you deserve it." Grace's heart was hammering. "Matthew, wait, let me finish. I know it's only been 5 months. I know we've had a rocky start. But Grace, you are the most real thing in my life. You see me, all of me, and you love me anyway. You make me want to be better. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you made the right choice when you gave me a second chance." He dropped to one knee, and Grace gasped. He pulled out a small box, opened it to reveal a simple ring, a single perfect diamond on a platinum band, elegant and unfussy. "Grace Miller, will you marry me? Will you let me love you and honor you and stand beside you as your equal partner for the rest of our lives?" Grace was crying now, tears streaming. "You really mean equal?" "I really mean equal. Your dreams are as important as mine. Your work matters as much as mine. We're a team, Grace, in everything." She pulled him to his feet, kissed him hard. Yes, I'll marry you." Matthew slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. I've been carrying that ring around for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. And Liam gave you the push you needed? Liam's a smart kid. Gets it from his almost stepmom. Grace laughed and kissed him again, deeper. Matthew responded immediately, his hands cupping her face, tangling in her hair. The kiss turned hungry, years of loneliness and months of careful restraint finally breaking. Grace, Matthew said against her mouth. If we keep this up, I'm not going to be able to stop. Then don't stop, she whispered. I want you, all of you, tonight. Matthew pulled back to look at her. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She took his hand, led him toward her bedroom. I love you, Matthew Hale, and I want to start our life together tonight. Matthew followed her, his heart so full it hurt. Grace turned to face him, and he saw his entire future in her eyes. He kissed her slowly, reverently. His hands shook as he reached for the hem of her sweater, and she helped him pull it off. She was beautiful in the lamplight, and she was looking at him like he hung the stars. I love you, he said. I love you too. Now show me. And he did. He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent and sure, and the rest of the world fell away as they closed the door on the night. Later, they lay tangled together in the quiet, fingers linked, hearts still racing. That was... Grace trailed off. Yeah. Matthew pressed a kiss to her temple. Stay with me tonight? Every night, Grace promised, for the rest of our lives. They married 3 months later, a small ceremony in the community center where they'd met. Grace wore a simple dress that made her glow, and Matthew wore a suit that actually fit, though he complained about the tie. Liam was the ring bearer and took his job seriously. Grace's family filled half the room. Matthew's side was smaller. A few friends, his business partner, Liam's mother, who'd graciously said she was happy for them. But it didn't matter. What mattered was the vows. I promised to see you, Grace said, her voice steady despite the tears. All of you. To honor your struggles and celebrate your successes. To be your partner in every sense. To love Liam as my own. And to never let a day go by where you doubt how much you're loved. Matthew's voice was rough. I promise to trust you with my whole self. To be honest, even when it's hard. To support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine. To be the father Liam deserves and the husband you deserve. And to love you with everything I am for the rest of my life. When they kissed, the room erupted in cheers. The reception was held in the center's main hall, the same room where Matthew had once sat in a plastic chair and watched Grace transform his son's life. There was dancing and terrible speeches from Grace's brothers and a cake Liam had helped design. It wasn't fancy. It was perfect. Late in the evening, Matthew found Grace standing by the window, watching the city lights. Hey, Mrs. Hale, he said, wrapping his arms around her. She leaned back against him. I'm keeping Miller professionally, but I like the sound of that. I like it too. He pressed a kiss to her neck. Happy? Absurdly happy. You? More than I ever thought possible. He turned her to face him. Thank you. For what? For giving me a second chance. For seeing past the money to the man. For loving me and Liam. For making us a family. Grace cupped his face. You gave me just as much. You showed me I could have a partner who respects what I do. You gave me a son to love. You gave me this. She gestured at the center. A future where I can help even more kids. We're good together, Matthew said simply. We're better than good. We're everything. 5 years later, Grace stood in her new office at the Hale Learning Center, the flagship of what had become a nationwide network of tutoring facilities, all funded by the foundation she and Matthew had started. The old Riverside Center was still open, but now it was one of 30 centers across the country, with plans for 50 more. She was reviewing applications when Liam, now 12 and reading 3 grades above his level, burst in. Mom, guess what? I got the lead in the school play. I'm going to be the narrator, and I have to read the whole thing. Grace stood and hugged him. That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. Dad's going to freak out, in a good way. He absolutely is. She ruffled his hair, still amazed that this confident boy was the same child who'd sat in her tutoring room 5 years ago, too scared to try. Where's your father? Conference call, but he said he'd be done by 4. Matthew appeared in the doorway as if summoned. I'm done now. And I heard something about a lead role. Liam launched into an excited explanation, and Grace watched her husband listen with fierce attention. Matthew caught her eye and winked, and her heart still fluttered. Later that night, after Liam was in bed, Matthew found Grace in the nursery they'd been preparing. She stood by the crib, one hand on her slightly rounded belly, and looked up when he entered. Hey, she said softly. Hey. He came to stand behind her, wrapping his arms around her and resting his hands over hers on her stomach. How are you feeling? Good. Tired. Happy. She leaned back against him, thinking about how much has changed. We've come a long way from that first day in your office. Grace laughed. You were so angry. I was terrified. I know. She turned in his arms. Look at us now. Matthew looked around the nursery. Pale, yellow walls, books already lining the shelves, a rocking chair where he imagined reading to their daughter the way he now read to Liam every night, without fear or shame. Look at us now. Who would have thought the difficult parent and the stubborn tutor would end up here? I would have, Grace said. I saw something special in you from the start. Under all that gruff and anger, I saw a man who loved his son enough to be terrified. And that's the best kind of man there is. Matthew kissed her, slow and deep. I love you, Grace Hale. I love you too. Both of you. She pressed his hand more firmly against her belly. All of us. They stood like that for a long moment. 2 people who'd found each other in the middle of fear and frustration, who'd built something beautiful from honesty and second chances. Outside, the city hummed. In Liam's room, their son slept peacefully, dreaming of his upcoming play. And in this room, in this moment, Matthew and Grace held each other and their future, complete and whole and home, and whole and home, and whole and home, and whole and home, and whole and home.